Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Dr. David Hooper, and I'm thrilled that you are back for another episode of the Unstoppable Introvert Project. I hope you're starting to feel a bit more unstoppable. We are getting into the year now, aren't we? We're a few weeks into January. We are, getting on with those goals. How are yours going? What were some of your goals? This is a really good time, the end of January, start of February, to be thinking about how on track you are today when it comes to achieving your goals. Did you have a financial goal? Are you trying to save some money or, make more money? Did you want to start a business? What steps have you done to do that? How's that weight loss journey going? Have you lost any pounds? Have you been moving more? How's the dating scene? Have you asked anybody out? What are your goals? Let me know. Send me a message at Dr. David Hooper on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere else you can find me. And I would love to hear about your goals, and I can hopefully help you try and achieve them. In terms of my own goals, I don't know if I've shared anything with you yet, but my main ones was start the podcast, and I'm thrilled that we're getting on with it. We're aiming for 100 episodes in 2024 at least, maybe even more than that. And I also wanted to lose a little bit of weight. Tiny bit. I am being quite active, been in the gym a lot, but another goal when it comes to health and fitness was recovery. So things like stretching, foam rolling. I got a massage gun for Christmas, is quite cool. And spending more time, looking after my body so I can perform better. And that's what this podcast's all about, but for your mind. Looking after your mind so you can perform better. Remember, we want to be becoming the most unstoppable, high-performing versions of ourselves, our beautiful, amazing, introverted selves, and your potential is unlimited. So we are going to dive into what we're getting into today, which is a goodie, and that is fear. So we're going to talk about overcoming fear today. And if I had to summarize being an introvert in one word, it would actually be fear. And the reason that is, it's because a lot of the words associated with being an introvert relate back to fear. For example, you want to ask somebody out, but you're too scared. You want to try and get promoted, but you're too scared. You want to take a big risk, but you're too scared. You want to go and achieve all these things, but you're too scared. And by saying those things there, I'm very much referring to myself. I've got so many examples of when I was absolutely terrified to do something because of my introverted nature. And what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk through some of the mindset hacks that I've used to go and achieve some really quite good things. Getting my PhD, speaking internationally on a stage, finding the love of my life, becoming an ultramarathon runner, starting multiple businesses, starting a podcast. All of these things are absolutely terrifying, but I've done them. And you can do them too, which is the great thing about all this. And the thing I always do is, if you ever Google successful introverts and you see what they've achieved, you can go, well, I'm an introvert, I can achieve those things too. So although I may not be on that Google list yet, I'm coming though. In a few years, I'll be on there. You can think, well, David's done X, Y, and Z, I can do it too. And that is very, very true. Let's get on to this. So what is fear? There's two choices when fear raises its ugly head. We can respond to it or we can react to it. Fear's there to essentially protect us and stop us from putting ourselves in dangerous situations that could risk our life. So if you think back to the caveman era, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when there was a saber-toothed tiger wandering around, and you were wandering around as well, and the hairs on the back of your neck prickled, and that made you think, right, I might get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger here. I need to run. I need to hide. I am fearful for my life. And as time has progressed and we've evolved, we've dragged fear along with us. And instead now of a saber-toothed tiger trying to eat us, it's all of these different situations that we're put in, or we put ourselves in, that now make us fearful, and we still have that emotional response. So the problem is that most people don't take the time to think whether the thing they're about to do or the thing they're fearing will risk their life. Let's say you're going to give a talk to 10,000 people on a stage. If you get up there and it goes really badly, are they going to just jump on stage and beat you? No. You'll just go off and feel shit. If you see an attractive guy at the bar and you go up to him and ask him out and he says no thanks, is he going to punch you in the face as well? No, he's not. So the thing that we need to firstly think of when we feel fear is my life in danger here? It's like that old Dr. Pepper advert. What's the worst that could happen here? And as long as it isn't life-threatening, you don't need to be fearful. That is just your emotional response, your caveman brain working overtime. People react to fear rather than understanding it and responding in a way that will be advantageous to their life. Fear is actually great fuel. You know, it gives you a lot of energy. You're more reactive. You're in a heightened state of awareness. You can concentrate more. You normally have more endurance. You're more energetic. It's actually a really useful state to be in. Is it mentally draining for us introverts? Yes. Yes, it is. Whenever I've put myself in a state where part of it was fearful, I have to recover. You know, it's like a big workout where I go in, I have to build myself up for it, do the work, come off stage or whatever it was I was doing, and have a lie down or, you know, calm myself down and then recharge the batteries. And as long as you've got the tools and strategies and frameworks to do that, that's absolutely fine. So what exactly is fear? I think we need to understand it before we can work out how to deal with it. So firstly, fear is an emotional response induced by a perceived threat, like I've mentioned, and it causes a change in your brain and organ function. And that directly affects our behavior. So you can probably imagine what this is. Things like hairs on the back of your neck, your breathing increases, your heart rate increases. And this is it's a natural response. It creates that fight, flight, or freeze. So you've probably heard of fight or flight, but you might have seen in some cartoons when the person's like, oh, I'm frozen, I can't move, when they're terrified. That's a real thing. It isn't always kind of physical, you know, feeling paralyzed that you can't actually move is a response, but it's also procrastination. So one of the biggest fears I have is when I have a big task coming up and I procrastinate. That's how I know why what I'm doing is meaningful. You know, I wanted to start this podcast at the end of 2023, but I procrastinated on it because I was fearful of taking the risk, putting content out there, being open and honest, but I knew it was going to have an impact on lots and lots of introverts across the world. So I knew that it needed to be done, but I still procrastinated on it because I was fearful. But the tagline for this podcast is that fear in today's world is merely an illusion. So we think things are dangerous because it's the closest thing to danger that we now experience, when actually most of our experiences aren't dangerous at all. You know, we aren't stalked by saber-toothed tigers. We put ourselves in a lot of the experiences that we're feeling fearful in because we're trying to grow and learn and develop as people. So it's just this kind of illusion. When you start to acknowledge that fear is an illusion, you can start to take control of what kind of situations you find yourself in. The thing to avoid is feeling like something is immediately wrong. So one of the first things I would do when you start to feel fearful is taking a pause, having a breath, allowing your logical brain to kick in, because we've got two kind of sides to the brain. One's reactive, one's logical. And instead of our reactive side going, I'm panicked, I need to run away, instead, use your logical side. Take a breath and pause and say, am I in physical danger right now? No. What's the worst that could happen in this situation? X, Y, and Z. And things will start to slow down. Incorporating some breathing work in there as well, and some meditation and mindset work, and you will be able to keep fear in the passenger seat next to you instead of it driving the car. Jen Gottlieb, who I think I've mentioned before, I love that term. You can never get rid of fear. So it will always be there. Trying to eliminate fear from your life, if you're an ambitious person, which you are, if you listen to this podcast, you want to achieve incredible things and become an unstoppable introvert, you need to be able to acknowledge that fear is in the car on your journey with you. But it's up to you whether fear is in the driving seat or is fear in the passenger seat, but you're still in control of where you're going. That's the key thing here. And something to acknowledge to get fear under control is identifying false evidence. So fear, F-E-A-R, is false evidence appearing real. So it's simply a manifestation of the stories we tell each other or have been told. They're not true. They are false evidence. And when you're scared, your imagination hurts you, basically. And it's up to you to change the story. If your imagination is hurting you, you can think to yourself, this is ridiculous. Why are you hurting me? Let's change that story, that narrative around whatever situation it is. Let's say you do want to go up to that guy in the coffee shop and ask them out on a date or ask for their phone number. Immediately you're fearful. You think, what if they say no? Fear kicks in. But then if you break it down with your logical response, one, you're going to make that guy's day by asking them out. They're going to be, whether they're single or not, they're going to be really chuffed. Two, if they say no, are they going to punch you in the face? No. They're probably going to be polite because you've put yourself out there. And if they're not, you know that you shouldn't be with them anyway. And if they do say no, you'll say, okay, no problem, and wander off. And you'll probably never see them ever again in your life. And when you break it down into that situation, going up to the guy in the coffee shop becomes a lot easier. If you think, what's the worst that could happen here? They could say no, then suddenly that isn't that bad a scenario, is it? So we can do that with all aspects of our lives. So if you are single, little challenge for you, a podcast challenge. If you are single and you're looking for love in 2024, go and ask somebody out this afternoon or this morning or whenever you're listening to this. Go and do it. If you're in the gym, don't interrupt anybody's working sets and don't do it inappropriately. But maybe when someone's at the water cooler, go and ask them for their number. Or if you're in a coffee shop, go and ask them if you can buy their next cup of coffee. Or if maybe you're going out to a bar, same kind of thing. But be confident. Be confident. And we are going to touch on confidence, by the way, in the next couple of episodes, because it's fear and confidence work hand in hand. But for now, all I'll say is, if you can keep fear in the passenger seat, not the driving seat, then you will be able to get a handle on how you deal with fear. So just remember, fear is coming from your imagination. It's playing tricks on you, and you are in complete control of your imagination. Now, remember, a couple of podcast episodes ago, we talked about beliefs. Beliefs are opinions, not facts. They're not true. You can change your beliefs. And this is exactly the same for fears. You can change your beliefs around fears. And you can tell yourself that you are in complete control. Realizing something is only appearing real and not real, and it can't hurt you, are real positive steps leading to liberation and empowerment when it comes to achieving your goals. Or I don't know if anybody's on YouTube watching this podcast, you'll see that my fur baby has joined us. Luna is in the house. If you've got any fur babies, cats, dogs, rabbits, ferrets, squirrels, whatever you got, fish, send me a message with them. Big animal lover here. We have multiple animals. I don't think my cat has made it onto the podcast yet, but she's bolshy. She's bolshy. Luna's an introvert. If I was going to label her, I'd say Luna's an introvert. Arwen, yeah, to be honest, Arwen's an introvert as well. We are all introverts in the Hooper household. And we like to keep ourselves to ourselves. Even when Luna goes for a walk and she's off the lead, if there's a group of dogs, she'll just walk with us. She's like, do whatever you want over there, dogs, I'm happy here. And Arwen is just arrogant. She just walks the place, thinks she owns it. Which, yeah, hey, she's confident. Good for her, good for her. Anyway, that got me off track. Let's get back to fears. Let's dive into some of the common fears that you might be struggling with, and let's see if we can do something about that today. So, common fears. I'm going to list a few, and then let's dive into one or two. Fear of rejection, massive one. The thing of not being good enough, I think, is a huge part of being an introvert. And if you can get to a place where you know that you are good enough, that is an incredibly dangerous place, actually, for other people. If you're an introvert who knows how good they are, that is a game changer. And suddenly being able to deal with rejection, breaks a lot of boundaries for introverts, and you can become a lot more high performing. So we're going to talk about self-worth and developing that self-worth and really saying, I am fucking great. I am fucking good. And we're going to get you to that point. I think a lot of people struggle with confidence around their self-worth. They've had lots of setbacks. Like that example when I said my wife was on the phone, people commenting on you, saying X and Y and Z. You're always grumpy. You're always down. You're never positive. Well, actually, I'm just living my life the way I want to live my life, and I am fucking good enough. So if you can get to that point, game changing. Fear of embarrassment. What if I get the question wrong in class? What if I mumble up my words when I do this presentation? What if I get rejected when I ask the guy out? That embarrassment is definitely something that we need to embrace. Fear of failure. What if it doesn't work out? That's something I battle with a lot. What if I fail? What if I put this podcast out and no one listens to it? Fear of success. What if I'm crazy successful and don't know how to deal with it? Something to think about. The list really is endless. We can be fearful about anything and everything, in all honesty, but it's about putting these different strategies in place and really thinking logically about, am I in danger? What's the worst that can happen? Is fear in the driving seat or the passenger seat? And you being in fully control. It's normal to feel fear. Like I've mentioned, this will not go away. This is here for life. If you aren't feeling fear, you are not growing, you are not progressing, you are not becoming the unstoppable introvert that you have the potential to be. So if you're feeling fear every day, you are growing. And I'm fucking thrilled for you. Fucking thrilled. But it's important to note that we have the ability to break down this illusion. So keep that in mind as we go. Great quote by Franklin Roosevelt, the old president of the USA. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. In order to remove fear, we must find it. So something that I find incredibly powerful is going and facing your fears. So that's something I've always tried to do, but I do it even more now. If I'm fearful of something, I have to do it. what that looked like for me was, well, something that I brought from school was people always thought I was thick. I don't know if that's a term used. Stupid, I guess, is a better word. Somebody commented on my Facebook post when I was about 18 saying something about me being kind of slow in the head, which was obviously horrible because I was quite popular at school and I just kind of laughed it off because I was good at sport. So when you're good at sport, you feel untouchable really. But reflecting back, that affected me. And I then applied for obviously my degree, then master's degree, then PhD. And every time I did that, I had this crazy fear of failure. You know, what if I am thick? What if I am stupid? What if I'm not clever enough? But with every time I applied, I knew I was facing that fear to a point now where I know that with the right amount of work and studying and reading and all that sort of thing, that I can achieve anything. And not that I care about what that person is doing now, but I could go and say, you know, I've got a PhD now, what have you got? But I couldn't give a shit about that person because I've developed this immense feeling of knowing my own self-worth and knowing how good I am. But I only got there by facing these fears at all these different steps. Similar with the marathon and the running. I wanted to become a runner. I couldn't run more than 3 miles. So I booked myself on a marathon. Did the marathon and thought, right, I'm going to do an ultra marathon. Did the ultra marathon. But it was terrifying. What if I fail? What if I'm embarrassed and I can only run a few miles? But it was about facing the fears. Every time there was an obstacle, being the person that stood up, faced fears is the difference. And I'm going to be doing something on TikTok around kind of like dares. You know, I'm going to dare you to go and do things to develop as an introvert, as a high-performing introvert, where if you're worried about communication, I'm going to ask you to go speak to 3 people a day. Or if you're interested in developing yourself, I'm going to ask you to lead a project, you know, that sort of stuff, where I'm going to dare you to do these things. Because when you face your fears, the fear evaporates. Do it once and it's gone. So keep that in mind. Start to think about, what are you scared of? Write a list, maybe your top 2 or 3 things, and then on the other side of the list, tell me what it is that you're going to do about it. Snap a picture, put it on Instagram, tag me at Dr. David Hooper, and I would love to see what you're going to do. Now, to do this, we need to break down exactly what it is you're afraid of, okay? We're going to draw the fear, write about the fear, act the fear, discuss the fear with loved ones, friends. Message me on Instagram. Your imagination blows things out of proportion. So when you start to be specific about what you're fearful of or why you're fearful, it normalizes it. And you go, actually, what am I talking about? Why would I be scared of that situation? So some of the ways you can do that are by asking yourself some questions. So here's a few questions that might help. What specifically are you afraid of? It might even be that you're not afraid of the whole event. It might be that you're afraid of just the middle bit. What situation would that specifically occur? So what part of the event are you terrified of, and why might that kind of occur? Then you can get into some details. What time of day would that happen? Where would it happen? What's the location? Who else is involved? How else could you understand this fear to make it more accessible? And when you've got all these details, where you've built this picture of your fear, you've got all the details attached to it, you can then embrace that fear. And the phrase that Bear Grylls uses to talk about embrace, I absolutely love, and it's kind of bravery. Being brave isn't the absence of fear. Being brave is having that fear, but finding a way through it. Now, how powerful is that? Now, I had an experience a few years ago. My wife was verbally abused at her work by her boss, and she came out of our work crying, and she came home, and obviously me being the guy, I guess, in terms of, being a married couple. I'm meant to be the man of the house, and need to protect Laura. Not that she needs protecting, but, from my perspective, I always want to protect my family. Obviously, I was pissed. Now, I knew that there needed to be a conversation with Laura and her boss in terms of what happens next. And this guy, we organised a meeting. I was going to go as well with Laura and him. And he was a lot bigger than me. Big guy, big guy. I'm only little. I'm only 5'8". I know I look absolutely stacked in these videos. But yeah, I'm only a little guy, 5'8", 5'10" if you look on my CV. And I knew that dealing with this conflict is something I didn't want to do, and I was fearful of it because no one wants to be in that situation. But anyway, we organised this meeting, and the guy didn't show up. I knew that I was going to have to go into the office. So Laura was in the car. I left Laura in the car, and I went to the office by myself. Now I was very fearful there. Going to confront somebody about a situation was something that I didn't want to do. I took no pleasure in it, but there needed to be a conversation because Laura couldn't work there anymore. So anyway, I self-talked myself into going. I said, what type of situations could be in there? What am I fearful of? What type of questions might come up? And I was prepared going into that conversation. I went in, and it was a difficult conversation, but at the end of it, Laura's contract was, negotiated. She got kind of paid off. She left, and we didn't need to take it further in case of court cases or anything like that. And that obviously brought her a lot of relief. She was able to kickstart her career, and she's gone on to be, extremely successful in what she's doing in the accountancy world. And, the sky's the limit for her. And that is one of my proudest moments where, as an introvert, I was able to stand up for my wife in a certain situation rather than cowering in a corner and thinking, actually, you know what, we'll just send an email, when actually this needed to be a face-to-face conversation. People were shocked when they heard that I'd done that. Always knew that I had strategies and tools and tactics to be able to do anything I want to do. And that's all it is. So if you're somebody who, similar to myself, doesn't like that confrontation, doesn't like to deal with such a negative situation, then you can apply these tools and techniques to deal with that as well. And I'm not talking about being aggressive. I'm not talking about looking for trouble or fighting or anything like that. I'm talking about having necessary conversations that need to be done. Maybe it's a manager at work and you're getting unfair treatment. Maybe it's your spouse, your partner, who's cheating on you and you need to confront them about it. Maybe you need to put yourself out there in terms of getting a promotion. That's a challenging thing to do as well. It's fearful to ask about these things as well. What about networking events? Maybe you've got your own business. Maybe you have to stand up and give a 5-minute presentation about who you are, what your business is, where you're based, all that type of stuff. All of these are really scary things when they're written down and you just kind of react to them. But if you're logical with them, you can have a really positive and meaningful experience. So that example that I gave was a challenging one at the time, but now I look back on it and think I'm really proud of that moment because I was able to stand up for someone I love and I was able to help her be freed from a really negative situation. Whereas, in other cases, that might not have been the way. And, look at those examples I just gave. If you're brave enough to say, look, I need to be promoted here, I need to get paid more, and they say, okay, great, you get paid more and you get promoted. If they say no, you go, okay, I need to be looking for another job or I need to be starting my own business, that type of thing. These are the practical examples that you need to be thinking about in your own lives. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the doors that are shut because you're fearful? And then it's time to go and smash those doors down. When you do find that fear, you can do some visualization. Like I mentioned in my example, you can visualize how the situation is going. And you can fully accept what would happen if everything goes right, if everything goes wrong. The more you embrace the fear, the weaker it will get, okay? So the more you embrace it and say, okay, this is the situation I found myself in. This is what might happen in a good way. This is what might happen in a bad way. You will start to extinguish that feeling. If you resist thinking about the fear, it will lead to anxiety and possibly panic attacks. Now, I suffered with panic attacks for a lot of years. A few years ago, when one of my businesses closed down, we got calls about things like money. We had to pay bank loans, that type of stuff. We got massively affected because of COVID, and we were scrambling sometimes. Thankfully, that's all behind us now. But when I got a phone call, I'd be terrified to pick up the phone, and I would ignore it for weeks. Then there'd be a knock on the door, and I'd be terrified of who's there. When if I just answered the phone and talked about it to whoever was on the line, the fear would have been extinguished, and I could have understood what was kind of required. So the more you resist the fear, the bigger the impact it's going to have in a negative way on you. So lean into the fear, love the fear, swap it for excitement. What you should do now, and my challenge to you is, anytime you feel fearful, lean into it. Get excited. Know that you are growing. Know that you are becoming the unstoppable introvert that you were born to be. Reframe it. Don't fear fear. Dance with it. And then you will start to achieve what you are here to achieve, guys. And that is one of the main things I want you to be thinking about. It's energy. Fear is energy. When you're able to embrace that fear, you feel pumped. When I was setting up this podcast, I was feeling terrified. But then I went through the process. Is my life in danger here? No. If no one watches this, what's going to happen? Nothing. If it turns into something positive, what's going to happen? So, action cures fear, inaction creates terror. Douglas Horton with that quote there, and I love it. So action is the answer to a lot of our problems, guys. So making sure you take that action. I've got a couple of questions to go through as well. How do you intend to face this fear? What is your strategy? When do you intend to face it? Do not put this off. Do not push it. How will you know when you face this fear? When we start to answer these questions, we can go from just finding our fear and understanding it in detail to really embracing the fear and accepting its reality. Because now we've taken action, we're eliminating that fear, and then once you've done the thing you're scared of, it's gone. It's gone. It's done. There is no failure, only feedback. Another quote for you there, Richard Bandler. I think it's really useful. When you start to see these different setbacks as opportunities to learn, feedback, giving feedback, all that type of stuff, then you know that you're in a good place, a strong place. So once you've kind of faced your fear, tell someone about it. Tell your partner, tell your colleague at work. Like, fucking hell, Mike, I went and did this speed dating the other day. It was fucking terrifying, but I met this girl who I really like. Tell someone about it. We want you to recognize, I want you to recognize fear that has been reduced. I want you to recognize when your fear has been reduced dramatically. We do this by reviewing what you've been through. And when you break that fear down, you will feel proud. Like I mentioned with my example, you will feel proud when you smash it out the park. So the key message there is feel the fear and do it anyway. It's all about that action, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you're getting into the swing of these kind of bi-weekly podcasts. If you've got any topics that you want me to cover, please let me know. Just send me a message on Instagram at Dr. David Hooper, and I will do my best to cover it for you. If you've got any questions you want me to cover on the podcast or need any support or coaching, just send me a message. I'm really approachable. I'm really nice, I promise. And I will do my very, very best to help in any way I can. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me again on the Unstoppable Introvert Project. It has been a pleasure to talk to you about fear. It's one of the biggest things that we face as introverts. And when you do overcome that, you will become more unstoppable every single day. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with your fellow unstoppable introverts. Please like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. David Hooper. You can find us on YouTube as well. And every week we're going to continue to uncover different ways that we can change the game for introverts all over the world. And I'm so excited to do it with you. So until next time, remember that being an introvert isn't the thing that will hold you back. It is the thing that will make you unstoppable. Until next time, guys.